Welcome back to our Dog Park versus Alley Cat Block of the Month challenge. We're trying to see which one is your favorite, so I hope you're voting on which block is your favorite each month between the Dog Park and the Alley Cat, and the overall quilt when it's finished. We're kind of on to an exciting part. I've been looking forward to this one. We're on to month 5, and this one is more of a vertical positioning instead of the horizontal. I used directional fabric in my kit for the Dog Park. The Alley Cat, it really doesn't matter. So you would want to pay attention to that if you're using a directional background, that this particular block is going to have to be cut differently than the instructions that you were given in the kit. Just because they were all cut the same way on the original instructions, there was no allowance given for directionality of the fabric. So I'm going to pull the camera in and we're going to get started on pulling out our pieces for month 5 of the Dog Park, and then I'll do the Alley Cat. Each month you get a nice color cover page that lets you know where the pieces go on the kit, so that's a very helpful tool in getting your block put together. We also always include the instructions on how the process works for peeling the paper. Now that you can see up close, you can see that my newsprint that I used for the back of the Dog Park, and the newsprint was a cute little nod to dogs being potty trained, is directional. If I had used the cutting instructions with the kit, you'd see that my writing would be sideways. So we certainly didn't want that. So I have my block pre-cut, and I've got my paper pattern underneath, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the light on so you can see where the pieces go. Now sometimes it's nice when you have a compound piece like the head, the muzzle, and the nose. You want to get these positions correctly, so sometimes I'll go ahead while this is off the background and just go ahead and position the top and middle layer of that compound section, and then I am pretty sure that I've gotten the placement correct. I want my nose going in the correct direction, and just with the heat of my hand, that will help temporarily place that Steam 2 until we get it ready to fuse. I could do the same thing with the 2 eyes, and these eyes are always these little black dots are always a little trickier for me to get off because they're so small, and I have thumbly thumbs. But I think one of the cute things about this is the positioning of the eyes really could give the animal a lot of different expressions. So if the eyes are googly-eyed or whatever, that just gives your quilt a little bit more personality. Now that I have my eyeballs on, well, my pupils on the eyes, I can go ahead and pull those off. Did that shift already? Yes, it did. And then I can go ahead and get my piece in position. And the body is in the background. First, it goes underneath the tongue and the muzzle and the head. So I can go ahead and peel the paper off of that. You can see that this is all laser cut and pre-fused with Steam 2, and that paper just peels off very easily. Now if I needed to reposition this, I still could. The Steam 2 does have a little tackiness to it, but it's not so much that I can't position those again if I need to. And I'm just going to continue on this process, peeling the paper off and getting these dog legs into position. And I just had lunch. I had fried chicken for lunch, and these little dog legs almost remind me of the chicken drumsticks that I had. But I don't think anyone would be eating a dog drumstick. And sometimes I'll just lift up the pattern just enough to be able to see exactly where a piece goes if I can't see through. Now if I wanted to, I could turn the light out in the studio, and that would help me see just a little bit better the pieces through the fabric, but then that would make it harder for you to see, so we won't be doing that. And I don't know if you can see that, but the dog paws are slightly different between the front and the back. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have those in the correct positioning. This smaller dot is going to the outsides, and the larger orange dot are the inside paws. So we'll go ahead and get those into position. And what's so great about this, you could have kids helping with this. This goes so quickly when the kids are laser cut like this, and you get such precise edges, and the design is so crisp that it really makes it a pleasure to do. And let's see, what we'll do next is the ears. The ears go underneath the head a little bit. And I like that I have all of my components laid out, so I know, one, that I have everything that I'm supposed to have, and that it's fairly in the right orientation, so as I'm putting it together I'm not getting something in upside down or backwards or on the wrong side of the head. And I'm going to shift this just a little bit. I'm not quite happy with where I got that lined up at. And that's much better. If you ever have a problem with one of the pieces not coming off, you can always just score the back of the paper, and that gives you something to fold and get a hold of. And that's just another way of peeling these off if you have a stubborn piece. I almost never have that issue. They always seem like they really come off beautifully for me, and I would just about guarantee that they will for you also. And I'm going to just double check which way this tongue or mouth comes. I don't want to put it upside down. And I've got my two eyes. And in real time you can see just how quickly the dog park block number 5 went together. Now after I get both of these done, you can see my eyeballs are going to have to be fused before it'll stick. I'm going to go ahead and get my Applique set up, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull my light box out of the way, and we'll get these fused. And this will be block 5. So we're going through this at a nice pace, and let's see if we're halfway done after we get this done. I have my Applique block set up. Again, the fabric that I used for the background of the Applique is a sort of rambling string print, and it didn't have any difference whether it was vertical or horizontal, so I didn't have to worry about changing this when I was following the original cutting instructions for the whole kit. because you couldn't tell the difference if it was horizontal or vertical, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I am going to go ahead again and position some of these pieces without the background underneath it, just to help eliminate one layer so I can see with the light box a little bit better. And once I get those in place, I can go ahead and put those components aside. But some of them with the compound pieces just makes it a little bit harder to see where they go when you've got that third layer of fabric there. I don't have to peel that off. I'm going to put my muzzle. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and position my nose, knowing that I'm going to have to lift that up a little bit once I get the muzzle in place. But again, that will help me get the perfect position. I could also do the whites of the eyes and then do the little pupils later. And I'm very happy. All of my pieces are peeling off really nicely. So I've got that ready. And I think that's about the only thing I need to do in advance. So I can go ahead and start laying my components down on the actual background. Again, just peeling off those pieces. I can see with the dotted line how far up the body of the cat has to go. And then I can come up and do the head. I could go down and do the legs, either direction I wanted to go in. Oh, and after I did all that, they fell off. But I can still see. You could also fuse some of these pieces in progress, but I don't feel it necessary to do that. Also, I like to just make sure that I haven't made a mistake, so I really like to stand back and look at the pattern kind of when the video's off, just so I'm not distracted, because once you fuse it, then it is permanent. I have been quilting for, well, since 1991, and I'm quite comfortable teaching, but what is kind of a new skill is videography. So that's been a little bit of a learning curve. Learning to videotape, edit, sound, processing the video, uploading it. That's all been a little bit of a learning curve. When I lift the pattern up, what I'm actually looking for is just where the very tip of the leg joint goes. And with just that little bit of information, then I can go ahead and put the legs in place. Again, we have the smaller dots are the two outside legs, and the larger dots are the two inside ones. So that's why the paper color sheet, the color cover, it comes in really handy in making sure you get the pieces in the right place. Not that it would ruin anything if you got the feet on wrong. The color and value is so close that maybe no one would even notice it, you know, if it wasn't the way that it was on the pattern. But I just kind of like to do it the way it is. That way I don't get in any trouble. And I can see here that my flower goes off of the page here a little bit. So that means I have to assemble the block first. But I can get the piece in place in the meantime. And I can see that goes underneath the muzzle, so I can lift the muzzle up and get that in. And I can also see that I put the muzzle underneath the head, which is wrong. So I can lift that up still because it's not fused. Lift up my nose and get all of those pieces put back the way they're supposed to go. And let's see, the big dot goes here. The darker one goes to the top. And then I have the smaller leaf. And at the moment I seem to be missing one of my little black dots, so I'll look very carefully around the studio and in the packaging to make sure that I haven't dropped it on the floor, because I have done that. But it is possible that one of them was missing. If you ever have a missing piece, you could just let us know and we can get that to you in the mail. These are packaged by hand, so it wouldn't be unheard of to have made a mistake. The whiskers and the little freckles always are the longest, take the longest time for me. And one thing I could do while I have the flower components here, I could go ahead and fuse just the two center circles onto the middle of the flower. That way I have just one component that I have to keep track of instead of three. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And these are all always just a little bit off center, which gives them that fun little quirky look that we love so much. So I can go ahead and fuse that separately with the flower paper still on the background, and then I can go ahead and remove that later. I have in the past been doing the video, or not doing a video, but doing a project, and I will have one of these little components stuck to the sleeve of my shirt and not realize it. So that's why I'm going to give a good look around before I ask for another dot. But another thing that I always do, if I inadvertently have gotten an additional component in a kit, I always make sure and hold on to those in case I ever need it later, because sometimes an extra piece comes in handy. So I'm going to go ahead and get the light box out of the way. we can set up the iron and the spray mister, because the Steam-A-Seam 2 does require moisture either from the iron or a spray bottle. And I can get this fused in place, and we'll have month 5 in the can. I've taken a good look at both of my blocks to make sure that they're represented the way they are in the front cover of the pattern. I have the eyes where I want them, and they're being a little bit slippery, these eyes. So I'm going to just hit those real quick. And here you just, I don't know if you just saw that, I just hit that the wrong way, and this is exactly why when I fuse, I like to use the pressing sheet, because I've crinkled that up just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hit both of these with my misting spray bottle. The Steam-A-Seam 2 does require moisture to activate the adhesive. That's why it's called Steam-A-Seam 2. And so I'm going to go ahead and get these wet a little bit and put on my applique pressing sheet, which helps hold the pieces down in place so that when I fuse, I'm not catching the edge of something and crinkling it under, which is what I just about did with my whiskers. The heat of the iron is going to go through my Teflon pressing sheet. The steam is trapped underneath it, so it's going to activate that adhesive. And I want to make sure that I hold this in place long enough for the heat to transfer all the way through all of the layers, even those complex layers of applique that are kind of stacked on top of each other. I'm not going to hold it long enough during the video just because it gets boring. But what I will do once I finish fusing this from the front, I'll flip both of these blocks over, and I'm going to re-mist it from the back, and I'm going to go ahead and re-iron them from the back, making sure the heat goes from the back to the front and the front to the back. The process is fairly simple. It's just peel the paper, place in position, and press. Peel, place, and press. But I do want to make sure that I get the fusing done adequately. But you can see the project goes rather quickly. I can go ahead and put these blocks aside, and when I have all 10 blocks finished, then I'm going to go ahead and put the quilt together. Keeping in mind my flower piece that is here on the block overlaps 2 different blocks, so I didn't peel the paper off the back of the actual flower, but I did on the 2 circle components. So I can fuse those together, and that'll just be one thing for me to keep track of until I need it, rather than 3 little pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over. I don't have to worry about the pressing sheet on top this time, because there's nothing for me to catch the edge of. But you can see I like to get a nice little coating of the mist on there, so that when I fuse, I really can tell that the Steam-A-Seam 2 has been activated. If I can get the fabric damp and the iron's on there long enough for the fabric to dry, I'm fairly certain that I've activated the Steam-A-Seam 2 enough. You cannot overheat the Steam-A-Seam 2, it's not going to disappear. But if you underfuse it, what you may have is, if you were doing any top stitching or any quilting, you might get gumming on the needle, which is an indication that you have not fused enough. I'll go ahead and continue this off video, but you can see just how adorable these blocks are and how quick it is to get it together. Well, we have both of our block 5 kits done. We have the dog park and the alley cat. These are both available as individual blocks. They are available as paper patterns, SVG files, and a self-print if you wanted to do your own raw edge applique or hand applique. We have the complete kits still available. The Steam-A-Seam 2 can be fused onto fabric, of course, with an iron, but Steam-A-Seam 2 could also be fused onto glass. We fused it onto wood, metal, burlap, canvas, so these could be used for a wide variety of projects. We want to thank you for stopping by for our Easter edition of the Block 5, and thank you for your time. I want to thank Urban Elementz for allowing us to do these free videos for you, and hope to see you again on month 6.